man, what a stuffy, just dickhead Cormier really is. I think if you really get to know Daniel Cormier, he's really not.
Yeah, I was not.
So here's what went down in Thailand. Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier got put together for a month filming this Russian reality show, and when it was all said and done, Jones got in front of a camera to absolutely torch his longtime rival. Called him a dickhead straight up, said he's an asshole who just won't let their beef die, and the whole thing is blown up across the internet, because it proves these two still can't stand each other after all these years.
Last season I was with Diaz, I was with Masvidal, and I was with Yoel Romero. It was so much fun, it was lighthearted, it was cool, we made good memories, we hung out with each other. This season is against Daniel Cormier. Oh man, what a stuffy, just dickhead Cormier really is. I think if you really get to know Daniel Cormier, he's really not.
Yeah, I was not.
He's an asshole. He really is an asshole. I mean, he didn't really connect with any of the fighters here. He's just an asshole. I tried to make peace with him many times, and he made it very clear that he wants to be enemies for the rest of his life because how lucrative it is.
This isn't just some promotional nonsense either. This is real hatred between two legends who genuinely despise being in the same room together. The clip that's making rounds everywhere comes from Jones sitting down with Red Corner MMA after they wrapped filming on ALF Global. It's basically their version of The Ultimate Fighter, filmed in Thailand with Jones and Cormier as opposing coaches working with up-and-coming fighters. Sounded like must-watch television given their history, but nobody predicted just how much venom would pour out once the official cameras stopped rolling. When they asked Jones about working alongside Cormier, he dropped all pretense and delivered one of the most brutal character assassinations you'll ever see on film.
You look at the way that he treats his staff members. He brought like 10 yes men out with him and literally, go get me my water. Where's my this? Why is that this? It was just, he just bosses guys around. You know, and the times we weren't filming, he wasn't very sociable with the people on set. He's just a kid. I think people that really work with him will know that.
Now get this. Jones compared this season to when he worked with guys like Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal, and Yoel Romero before. Those dudes, despite being absolute killers themselves, made the whole experience fun, according to Jones. They hung out between filming, grabbed meals together, actually enjoyed each other's company, despite the competitive setup. With Cormier, though, completely different story. Jones says the tension never lifted. Not even for a second. Every single interaction carried baggage from their past, and Cormier apparently made zero effort to change that dynamic.
But the one thing I do know is that I made him cry in front of the world. I took him off of the list of being considered one of the greatest fighters of all time. He'll be even lower in the rankings of the greatest heavyweight of all time because my prospect, Gable Steveson, is going to be 3 times the champion Daniel Cormier ever was. And so he'll just always be in my shadow one way or another.
But Jones didn't stop there. He went after how Cormier treated the production staff too. Painted this picture of DC surrounded by yes men, barking orders at crew members, and basically acting like he was above everyone else working on the show. Says when the cameras weren't rolling, Cormier would disappear instead of mixing with the people actually making the show happen. Jones is basically saying the beloved commentator, the family man everyone thinks they know, that's all an act hiding someone much less pleasant behind the scenes.
Because for 3 years, it became, God, this guy's going to punch me, I'm going to punch him. It really was a nightmare looking back on it, if I'm being honest with you.
It was terrible.
Then comes the big question that everyone wants answered. After spending a month together, is there any chance these two Hall of Famers could finally bury the hatchet? Jones says absolutely not, and he puts all the blame on Cormier's shoulders. Claims he tried multiple times to extend olive branches during filming, approached DC with genuine offers to make peace, figured maybe being away from the fight game might create some space to heal old wounds. But Cormier shut down every single attempt, made it crystal clear he plans to keep this feud going until one of them is in the ground. And according to Jones, it all comes down to dollars and cents. Their rivalry has been one of the biggest moneymakers in UFC history, driving pay-per-view numbers through the roof, generating endless media coverage, providing both guys with content that never runs dry. Cormier's built a huge chunk of his broadcasting career around being Jones's enemy number one. Walking away from that beef means walking away from serious money, and Jones thinks DC is too greedy to do that. Peace was right there for the taking, but Cormier chose profit instead.
We fought that first fight in Vegas. I won the first fight. Second fight in Anaheim. Dude, you started hitting me in the stomach. Like,
I knew something because fight like shit. Those first 2 rounds, I was like, what am I doing? I fought a day of my life. And I was like, it worked out. Thank God. Thank God
You started throwing those shots to the body.
Of course, Jones had to bring up that moment that defines everything between them. UFC 214, when he dropped Cormier with that head kick in the 3rd round, seeing DC crumpled on that canvas, completely unconscious, remains one of the most replayed finishes ever. Jones brings it up because in his mind, that's the final word on who's the better fighter. What he conveniently leaves out of this rant is how that victory got erased. Failed drug test for Turnbull turned his knockout into a no contest. Cormier got reinstated as champion, and that knockout Jones treats as his trump card officially doesn't count as a win. Just another asterisk in a career full of them. Then Jones threw in this curveball about Gable Steveson, the Olympic gold medalist wrestler he's taken under his wing. Predicts Steveson will demolish Cormier's heavyweight legacy, become 3 times the champion DC ever was. Even if they never cross paths again, Jones plans to keep his rival in the shadows through his protege, someone who'll achieve everything Cormier couldn't.
But the last fight in the Apex, when you look back on it, I'm kind of bitter about that. We fought in front of 20,000 both times, and then
it
to
was
fight
awkward.
the Apex, it wasn't good.
It was like awkward because what's funny is you hit me, I hit you, and you're boom, and you like literally hear the echoing of the punch. It was like, this is so weird. And then I hear your coach, I hear my coach. I'm like, it's like we're sparring.
Yeah, it was off, but it was kind of crazy because I felt like it didn't do justice to what the rivalry was.
I know.
It kind of.
This interview has spread like wildfire across every MMA platform you can think of. MMA Fighting jumped on the most inflammatory quotes. MMA Mania focused on Jones, claiming Cormier wants to stay enemies forever. Bloody Elbow called it proof that any friendship hopes are dead and buried. Yahoo Sports tied it all back to what the ALF show means for both their media careers. Everyone's reaching the same conclusion, though. Whatever microscopic chance existed for these two to make peace just got nuked from orbit. The timing makes it even more brutal because Jones was actually optimistic before filming started. Posted on Instagram about how great it would be having Cormier on the show. Maybe they could work through their messed up relationship. That optimism got completely obliterated by whatever went down in Thailand.
I've had a lot of rematches and instances with people, but this is the one that I appreciate the most.
Cormier gave his own take on the experience before Jones dropped this bomb. Told Red Corner MMA that being around Jones feels different now that he's done fighting. Without the threat of actually having to throw down, he says the nastiness has cooled off. Described their interactions as professional, admitted they argued plenty, but found ways to coexist without wanting to murder each other. DC also revealed they talked about other ways to compete during filming. Argued about a boxing match, which Cormier agreed to, but the real heat came when discussing wrestling. Cormier challenged Jones to a wrestling match and guaranteed he'd win by technical fall, 10-0, proving his dominance in the discipline that made him famous before MMA ever existed. This opens the door for their rivalry to continue outside the octagon. Jones acknowledged the wrestling challenge could be interesting, but stopped short of accepting. Probably won't happen, and even if it does, won't bring closure to anybody. What makes this footage go viral isn't just the insults, though those are spicy enough to generate clicks for days. It's the confirmation that after more than 10 years, 2 men who ruled the same division at their peaks still can't be in the same zip code without everything turning toxic. They filmed together for weeks, supposed to mentor young fighters and model professionalism for compelling television. Instead, they left Thailand hating each other more than when they showed up. To really understand why this footage hits so hard, you need to know the catastrophic history these two share. This isn't some manufactured WWE drama cooked up by promoters to sell pay-per-views. This is genuine, poisonous hatred built on public humiliation, physical violence, drug scandals, professional jealousy, and cheating accusations spanning over a decade. Every insult in that viral clip carries the weight of everything that came before. The spark that started this whole mess goes back to 2010 at UFC 21 in Anaheim. Jones was this 22-year-old phenom, tearing through the light heavyweight division like a natural disaster. His weird striking angles, that insane reach, his ability to finish guys from positions that shouldn't be possible marked him as something special. Cormier was competing at heavyweight in Strikeforce, 2-time U.S. Olympian in wrestling with championship dreams of his own. Backstage at that event, Jones approached Cormier with what he called a friendly bet, said he could take the accomplished wrestler down. Cormier took it as disrespect from some young punk who didn't know who he was talking to, dismissing his Olympic credentials like they meant nothing. The exchange lasted maybe 60 seconds, but that wound festered for years. Both guys interpreted it completely differently and let the resentment grow. By 2014, their beef had become completely unhinged. Cormier dropped to light heavyweight, beat Patrick Cummins and Dan Henderson to earn a title shot against Jones at UFC 78. The UFC saw gold in their mutual hatred and scheduled media events to exploit every drop of it. The trash talk got so intense that during an off-air exchange captured by ESPN cameras, Jones crossed a line that chilled everyone who heard it. Said he would literally kill Cormier. These weren't scripted promotional sound bites. This was real, visceral, and genuinely dangerous. Both men seemed to mean exactly what they were saying. Their first fight went down at UFC 182 on January 3, 2015. Jones dominated for 5 brutal rounds, controlling the clinch, landing devastating elbows, outworking Cormier at every turn. Judges scored it 49-46 across all 3 cards, decisive and comprehensive. In the final seconds, Jones celebrated early and threw what many considered a cheap shot at Cormier, leading to a post-bell scuffle and a crotch chop aimed at his beaten rival. After the fight, Jones told the media he hoped Cormier was crying somewhere. Then Jones's world collapsed outside the octagon. April 2015, hit-and-run accident in Albuquerque that injured a pregnant woman. Witnesses saw Jones flee on foot, come back to grab cash from his car, then run again. Police found marijuana, drug paraphernalia, and condoms in his vehicle. UFC stripped his title and suspended him indefinitely. Cormier capitalized on the opening, submitted Anthony Johnson at UFC 187 to claim the championship his rival was forced to give up. They scheduled the rematch for UFC 200 in July 2016, one of the biggest cards ever. Days before the event, Jones tested positive for estrogen blockers, substances used to mask anabolic steroids, and got pulled from the card entirely. Cormier fought Anderson Silva as a replacement. The rematch everyone wanted got delayed again, this time by Jones's apparent chemical cheating. The rematch finally happened at UFC 214 on July 29, 2017, and Jones delivered the most devastating moment of their entire rivalry. Third-round head kick sent Cormier crashing unconscious to the canvas. The image of DC crumpled and motionless with Jones standing over him became one of the most iconic finishes in UFC history. Seemed like definitive closure, but Jones tested positive for Turinabol, and the result got overturned to a no contest. Cormier was reinstated as champion. The knockout Jones considers proof of his superiority became officially just an asterisk, not a legitimate victory, but a tainted moment that'll forever carry the qualifier of a failed drug test. Cormier has called Jones a cheater in basically every interview since. The no contest added another poisonous layer to a rivalry already drowning in resentment. Cormier felt robbed of a clean loss because even losing honestly would have been better than winning through disqualification. Jones felt robbed of a legitimate victory, convinced his physical dominance was real regardless of what any drug test claimed. Neither man has shown any willingness to let it go. Cormier retired in August 2020 after back-to-back losses to Stipe Miocic in their heavyweight trilogy. Transitioned to commentary and broadcasting, became a regular on UFC broadcasts while building a substantial media career as a podcaster and analyst. Jones vacated his light heavyweight title that same year, moved to heavyweight after years of dominance at 205. Eventually won the heavyweight championship in 2023 by submitting Cyril Gane in the first round. Even in retirement, Cormier couldn't escape Jones's shadow. Jones kept referencing their fights in every interview, mocking Cormier's losses and claiming he permanently removed DC from any conversation about the greatest fighters ever. Cormier fired back through his podcast and commentary work, criticizing Jones's drug failures, personal troubles, and character. This is the context that gives the Thailand footage its devastating impact. When Jones says Cormier wants to be enemies for life because of how profitable it is, he's talking about more than a decade of mutual destruction turned into content. Every pay-per-view, every interview, every social media exchange has generated revenue for both of them. Their hatred has been profitable in ways most rivalries never achieve. The Jones-Cormier rivalry dominates headlines and captures imaginations worldwide, but both men carry scars from other feuds that shape their careers in profound ways. Understanding these parallel conflicts shows why reconciliation between Jones and Cormier might genuinely be impossible, and why one found peace with a former enemy while the other cannot. For Cormier, the rivalry that came closest to matching the Jones intensity was his heavyweight trilogy with Stipe Miocic. What makes this comparison particularly telling is how fundamentally different it ended. Cormier and Miocic were genuine friends before they ever fought, texted regularly about their lives, families, careers. Cormier visited Miocic's firehouse in Ohio for interviews, spent time with the firefighters Miocic worked alongside between fights. They enjoyed each other's company and had mutual respect, then got matched for the heavyweight championship, and everything changed with the sudden violence of a car crash. Cormier described the Miocic rivalry as a nightmare. For 3 years, every interaction with his former friend got filtered through the knowledge that they'd have to hurt each other as badly as possible. The friendship they'd built made the violence more emotionally difficult to process. You can't punch someone you care about without carrying that weight afterward. Their first fight at UFC 26 in July 2018 saw Cormier knock out Miocic in the first round, with a barrage of punches, becoming the UFC's dual champion at light heavyweight and heavyweight simultaneously. But Miocic felt denied an immediate rematch while Cormier pursued a super fight with Brock Lesnar. That never happened. The delay bred resentment. The rematch at UFC 241 in August 2019 delivered one of the most remarkable comebacks in heavyweight history. Cormier dominated early rounds, outworking Miocic with wrestling and dirty boxing in the clinch. But Miocic adjusted in the fourth round with devastating effect, targeting Cormier's body with brutal precision. The shots accumulated until Cormier couldn't absorb them anymore. His defensive posture crumbled under the relentless assault. Miocic finished him by TKO to reclaim the title he'd lost 13 months earlier. The rubber match at UFC 252 in August 2020 took place in an empty arena during the pandemic. The eerie silence amplified every punch and grunt. Miocic won by unanimous decision after 5 hard rounds, and Cormier retired afterward with tears streaming down his face. The trilogy got marred by eye poke accusations from both sides. Miocic required retinal surgery after the first fight. Cormier suffered a torn cornea in the decider, but both men acknowledged they pushed each other to their absolute limits. Despite the violence, accusations, and physical damage, Cormier and Miocic emerged from their rivalry with respect intact. When they sat down together after Cormier's retirement to reflect on what they'd built and destroyed, the conversation was warm and genuine. The friendship was damaged, certainly, but not beyond repair. They found their way back to something resembling what they had before. This is the contrast that makes the Jones situation so striking and apparently hopeless. Cormier found peace with a man who punched him in the liver until his body failed. He hasn't found peace with Jones. The difference can't be explained solely by fight outcomes or severity of violence. Something else separates these rivalries. For Jones, the rivalry that preceded Cormier and established the template for how he handles conflict was with Rashad Evans. Jones and Evans were teammates at Greg Jackson's legendary gym in Albuquerque. Evans, already a former UFC light heavyweight champion, took young Jones under his wing. Then Jones publicly stated he'd fight Evans if the UFC demanded it. Evans felt betrayed. The pact in his mind was sacred. By even suggesting he'd consider the matchup, Jones had violated an agreement between brothers. Evans left the camp and joined a rival gym in Florida. What had been friendship curdled into the kind of hatred that only emerges from wounded intimacy. Their fight at UFC 145 in April 2012 was one of the most anticipated grudge matches in history. Jones dominated across 5 rounds, winning by unanimous decision, while landing the kind of elbows that leave lasting damage. The bad blood simmered in every exchange, but unlike the Cormier rivalry, this one eventually healed. By 2016, Jones approached Evans backstage at a UFC event and said he hoped they'd always be cool. They hugged, and something shifted. In 2017, they met formally, signed gloves for each other, expressing mutual regard, and shared a meal as friends rather than enemies. When Evans got inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame in 2019, Jones praised him publicly as a pioneer and class act who shaped his career in ways he could never repay. Jones has proven he possesses the capacity to reconcile with a former enemy. He did it with Evans. The question hanging over the viral footage from Thailand is why he can't do it with Cormier, or why Cormier can't do it with him. According to Jones, the answer is money. Cormier has built a substantial portion of his post-fighting career on his identity as Jones's nemesis. The hatred generates content, drives engagement, provides endless material for podcasts and commentary, and social media. Walking away from that rivalry means walking away from a significant revenue stream. According to Cormier's public statements over the years, the answer is simpler and more fundamental. Jones cheated. The failed drug tests, the positive samples, the overturned result at UFC 214. These aren't things Cormier can forgive or forget. The knockout that Jones invokes in every interview exists in Cormier's mind as a tainted moment. Not a legitimate victory, but evidence of a cheater stealing something that should have been earned honestly. The Thailand footage won't resolve this schism. If anything, it hardens both men's positions and eliminates any remaining ambiguity. Jones believes he tried sincerely to make peace and got rejected. Cormier presumably will offer a different account of those same interactions. What comes next may be a wrestling match. Cormier has challenged Jones to compete on the mat where no drug testing exists, and the only thing at stake is pride. Jones has expressed guarded interest without committing to a date or venue. If it happens, it represents another chapter of a rivalry that refuses to end, even as both men have moved past their fighting primes. Or nothing may happen at all. They may continue conducting parallel interviews about each other, trading insults through media, and monetizing the hatred that's defined both their careers, since the viral footage from Thailand is simply the latest installment of a story that shows no signs of concluding. Jones won both fights. Cormier claims one was stolen through pharmaceutical cheating. Neither man will ever back down, and the footage that's captivated the MMA world proves it. The ALF Global show will eventually air, and audiences will witness some version of what transpired between these two during their weeks together in Thailand. The production team captured their coaching sessions, interactions with fighters, and presumably some of their arguments about boxing and wrestling matches. What the show can't capture is the private contempt Jones described in his interview. The bossing around of staff members, the refusal to socialize, the rejection of every peace offering. Cormier hasn't yet responded directly to Jones's specific accusations from the Red Corner MMA interview. Given his platform as a broadcaster and podcaster, a response is likely coming. When it arrives, it'll probably offer a starkly different account of the same events. That's the nature of their rivalry. They experience the same moments and come away with contradictory interpretations, each convinced the other is acting in bad faith. For fans who followed this rivalry since its inception in 2010, the Thailand footage represents something melancholy. There was a time when reconciliation seemed possible. Jones rehabilitated his relationship with Rashad Evans. Cormier found peace with Stipe Miocic. Passage of time heals most wounds, even in combat sports where the wounds are literal. But Jones and Cormier appear to be the exception. They're two of the greatest fighters in UFC history. Men whose legacies will endure long after they stop competing. They share a history that includes two of the most anticipated fights ever staged, and they can't stand each other. The viral footage confirms what many suspected: this rivalry ends only when one of them dies. Until then, every interview, every podcast, every chance encounter will carry the weight of everything they did to each other. Jones knocked Cormier unconscious. Cormier watched that knockout get erased from the official record. Neither man will ever forget, and that brings us to the end of this deep dive into one of the most bitter rivalries in combat sports history.